Hello folks, how you doing? Good to be with you. I want to talk about chaos and cosmic order as a prescription to how the human can live in harmony with natural events. First we get the chaos. Well, what did the ancients mean by chaos? Well, this chaos occurs when, for example, the sun sets in the evening and goes down. It is considered as entering what they call the underworld, simply because it's out of sight and it leaves behind darkness. They call this the underworld. The same if a star sets beyond the horizon or below the horizon. It is considered to have entered the underworld because we can't see it, you see. So when it comes to cosmic events, the underworld occurs when a celestial body dips below the horizon and it can't be seen. It is considered as the underworld. So it is said that the ancient humans, some of them, lived in a state of chaos, you see, because they didn't tell time by the stars, the moon, or the sun. So they wasn't paying, let's say, attention to this aspect or this potential that these celestial bodies had. That is, you could tell time by the stars, moon, and the sun. So there came a time when the humans questioned things. They wanted to know certain things. They wanted to understand things. These are the very early humans. They are the ones who actually started the cosmic order. But when they witnessed, for example, thunder, lightning, windstorms, etc., they wanted something that they could use as a means to relate in some way to these natural events that they saw as very powerful, far more powerful than them. So the ancient humans took animals, the wild beasts, lion, hippo, crocodile, elephant, etc., because they were much more powerful than the human also. And so they represented certain events by these animals. And then eventually they described stars in the sky, which we call constellations. And they placed the animals, okay, in those constellations. And because they represented types of energy, they were given the name Neter, or the Neteru. U is plural. And they eventually became, the goddesses in the sky. at first they were goddesses. There were no gods. They were all goddesses. Like Typhon and Apt and Kep. These are names given to a constellation. The constellation of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. And the Great Bear was it was used as an instrument of time. When they put the hippopotamus there, the hippopotamus goddess, Apt. And they could tell time by this constellation because it went in a circle. Its period was a year. So each year, this constellation, or the hippopotamus, created a circle in the sky. And they could tell time by this, okay, because it completed its period in a year's time. So it even gave them the seasons of the year there in the sky. They could make out the seasons of the year. When the rainy season was coming, when the planting season was coming, and when the harvest season was coming, simply by looking in the sky. So they worked with many, many constellations that they described in the sky, okay, for the purpose of telling time, the time to do certain things, okay. But when a constellation, for example, sank beyond the horizon due to the movement and spin of the earth, etc., it was considered as going into the underworld. It had died for the time being, only to rise up again. Or sometimes a constellation would disappear and you wouldn't see it anymore due to the movement of the earth. But anyway, we see now how people began to sort of put order in their lives. By time, you see, that they were able to make out due to the constellations that they described, drawing a line from star to star to put a figure there in the sky. You see, probably for the purpose of memory and communicating this to others. For example, they could point out the lion sign or the scorpion sign or the sign of the Great Mother, the timekeeper. She's referred to as Mother of Time, the creator of time, because this was probably the first constellation by which folks told time. So they called her the Mother of Time. So now, when people start doing this, telling time by the stars, etc., they brought themselves out of what later generations refer to as chaos. The folks lived in chaos before they start telling time by the stars, etc. You see, because they wasn't telling time by the stars at first. And so it was like they were in the underworld. Even though the constellation might have been there on the horizon, they weren't paying any attention to it because they had not come to the point where they could tell time by the stars. And so they lived in the realm of chaos, or the underworld. You see, even though they weren't chaotic. It was just said, as a means to describe that they hadn't come to the point where they were actually telling time. Because with this time, it's used as a guide. The constellations will tell you for example, will guide you to when something should be done. Some folks use the constellations as guides relative to traveling on Earth, such as the Polynesians. They found their direction by the stars. And others did too. Folks who wandered the desert certainly did the same thing. Like the Sahara Desert, you could get lost out there. So the stars would help them guide their way. So the stars also were guides to the folks. It would guide you through the underworld. At night, you could look up and see the stars. Nighttime was like the underworld, when you could look up and see the stars to find your way. You see, the autumn was also a time of the underworld, like in November, December, etc. Because the sun had dipped down, so they say. The fall of the year, the sun fell. Well, it was simply that there were fewer hours of daylight. There were more hours of night during the time of year, like it is today, or this time of year, So this is the notion of chaos. Etc. And as we see that time by the stars was like a prescription to put harmony in the people's lives relative to living with nature. So here we have the chaos, those who lived in chaos, those who lived in the underworld, and we see the cosmic order that later came about as the ingenuity of the early humans. The cosmic order, ordering of time, which we still live by. We live by time today. As a matter of fact, we can't do without it. It seems that the human cannot do without time today. But this time is a legacy bequeathed to the present-day human by the most ancient ancestors. Thank you. And subscribe. I have many more things to talk about. Thank you and have a good day. All right.